Hey everybody. Did a video a while back on the 5-speed rebuild for Datsun 280Z. So this is the next project that I wanted to video. This is the rebuild of the rear differential. This is an R200. Okay, so before you completely disassemble the differential, you should check where your backlash is at. And you should, and I'm going to show you that in a second, and you should also look at right here, there's a number that's painted on at the factory. This one says, it's backwards camera wise, but it says 92 and then a -6. So that if you look at the factory service manual, the 92 is just a set identifier for the pinion and the ring gear. So you don't need that number, but the second one you should get, and that's -6. That's H prime. That's in the factory service manual. So if you, when you clean this, don't clean it so well that you erase those numbers. They're permanent, but they can get, if you use like lacquer thinner, they're going to go away. So you do need those numbers. The other thing I want to do here is you should put this thing in a solvent tank and clean out the oil, because to do the backlash you got to get that sticky oil out of there, or you're not going to be able to really hear. So so I've set this up just like it's in the factory service manual with the dial indicator, and so you can hear it when you move the ring gear. Hear that? And you can see the movement right there. So if I zero this out or put it on the closest whole increment, so I got around 7 thousandths. Yeah. Yep, 7 thousandths. So I believe that's within spec. Last one I did these, I got it to 6. So it's 7 thousandths. So you want to just check that out. So right now, I don't think we have a backlash problem. So this thing was making noise. And more than likely it's all the bearings need to be replaced, and they will howl and they make all that annoying noise. Right now, backlash is looking pretty good. Okay, now here's the next step. In disassembly, so you have these 4 cap screws, cap bolts here that are locking in the side bearings. So we need to take those off, and they're on there with quite a bit of torque. These, once you get those cap screws out of there, they're just kind of wiggling around, so you can just pull them out. Make sure you mark them left and right. It'll just help keep everything straight when you put it all back together. You just have to wiggle them out. There we go, there's the right one. Okay, now we got to use a puller. Get a little... All right, so put this tool here just to get a grip on it, and I've got a puller here, and I just put it right there. I just took a couple pulls, and it's starting to come out. So when it starts to come out like that, I'm going to slow down right there, because you've got spacers on both sides, left and right, and you want to pull those out and make sure you know which ones are left and which one are right, because that's what sets how your 2 gears mate, the pinion and the ring gear, and that affects your backlash. So so it's starting to come out, so I'm going to take this piece off now. I don't need that anymore. And I'm just going to kind of bring it on out. There it is, no problem. And just kind of keep your hands on everything. And there it goes, just like that. Okay, so you got one spacer and a bearing cone right there. So that's the left. And then the right, you've got a bearing cone and a similar spacer. These spacers come in different thicknesses, so you can set that. Those are still available from the dealer. So now this thing's out as a unit, so we'll set that aside. Okay, so we need to remove these side seals, these oil seals. We'll use a tool like this And thing is, you got to be careful with these. So when these are brand new, they're sharp as shit. You can put them in there and easily kind of gouge the surface of the housing. If you do, not a major deal, but it's better if you don't, because the oil is never this high. So what I like to do is kind of get in there and see if I can feel around for the lip. Just get this thing engaged, just like that. Got it bolted to the bench. Then you're just gonna kind of ease this out. It's not cooperating right now. Let's try a different side here. There it goes, just like that, no problem. Yep, nice and clean. So that's out, and then we'll just do the other side same way. All right, seals are out. Next thing we need to do is take that pinion shaft out. And so this, you might need, you're gonna need some kind of tool to do this. I had this shit sitting around the shop. It actually works perfect. So feature here is I got a big hole in here that I can fit that 27mm socket in there. And then I took this piece and then I drilled through 2 holes, these 8mm bolts, so that I can lock it in on the flange here. So now that flange is not going anywhere, and then I've got this thing C-clamped to the bench. I did this on last rebuild, so it was worth the investment, I thought, because it's going to be used throughout this process. Now you could also just take a piece of bar steel. It's going to have to be beefy, and it's going to have a hole so you can get access to this bolt. I guess, you might even be able to do something out of wood, if that's, if you got tools to drill a hole like that in wood. So there's different ways to do it. This is just the way I did it. So now that it's bolted down, just put some oomph in it. All right. So that's got quite a bit of torque. I think it says it's something like 160 is the setting. So okay, so we get that nut out of there. Here it is. And then next step here is going to take this off. Then you're going to use a puller. And what I'm going to use looks like this, big heavy duty puller. So I'm going to put that on the flange, gauge this piece on the shaft, the end of the shaft, and then pull it off. Okay, we got the puller installed right here and put a little force on it. And take a 1 3/8 inch and there it goes. All right. That's off. There you go. There we go. I'm still seeing some factory marks here, a little yellow and a little remnant of Loctite, so that's probably why that thing took a little punch to get it off there. So now the next step here is the only thing that's holding that shaft in is just the interference fit between this shaft and the 3 pinion bearings. There's a ball here, and then there's 2 tapered bearings opposed down here. So the next step is to take it to the press and just press. It's not going to take very much force, and you wouldn't need to use a press, but I'm going to. You're going to need a press for many other things on this job anyways. One thing I'll say is when we take it to the press, we're going to make sure there's a big ball of rags inside the case. So when this thing drops, because it will just drop when it gets past the interference fit of the bearings. And if you have a pile of rags in there, it'll catch that bearing or catch the pinion gear so it doesn't bang up on something. So that's coming up next. All right, so we're going to press the pinion shaft out here. Now there's, see down here, hopefully you can see that. Maybe you can't, just out of the range, but yeah, I put a bunch of rags inside the in the casing, so if this falls, I'm not going to booger up the pinion gear when it falls. The other thing you can do is put the nut back on like I've done here, and just wrap a rag around here, and so there's no way it'll catch it there. I'm all about safety here. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out that I did a couple months back is I added a gauge to my press, and the reason I did that is to just really have a better idea of what's going on. So when you're pressing something, if you have a gauge, you can actually see, you'll see the pressure go up and up, and then when it starts to go, when it starts to, you know, in this case, when that pinion starts to go out, pressure is going to drop, and you'll see that. Because what you don't want to do is take this thing up to, you know, a shit ton of pressure without knowing. And then you know, when you're pressing things, sometimes you can forget stuff like circlips, things like that. So this gauge will tell you if something's wrong before something gets destroyed. So, so in this case, before I went on camera here, I just kind of put some pressure on it. I went up to like over 1,000 psi, which is, you know, for this press, 1,000 psi is about 1,700 pounds. This is a 20-ton press, so it's not a shit ton of force. But for stuff like this, normally I'm hovering around, for pressing bearings on and off, I'm never over 400 or 500 psi. But so this thing kind of went up to about 1,000. There it goes again. And it went up to 1,000, and then it's dropping. Now it's about 800, 750. So the thing is moving, so that's good news. So we're just going to put another pull into it. Went up to 1,000. Now it's dropping to 750. Another pull over 1,000, 750. And I'm looking right here at the gauge, so I'll show you kind of live what's going on there. So I pull, goes almost 1,000, not quite. Now it's down to 700. So this thing's starting to really loosen up. Another pull, and down to 650. So I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to get my rag here, so I'm not going to pinch my finger, but so it's definitely moving. And just keep pulling. Now nothing's over 400 or 500 psi now, so that's perfect. So right in here somewhere, it's going to just drop out. A little bit more. There it goes. Okay, so we got zero pressure. Take the spacer out of there. And okay, so my pinion is just kind of binding on that rag. You can see it just moves freely. And with that, we're going to move this whole thing to the bench. Nice to keep the nut on there too, because when you take it off of the press and move it back to the bench, things are not falling out. So you'll see that next. Okay, so now we got it on the bench. See, it's moving around, it's free, so I'm going to just loosen this nut. We'll just pull the pinion right out. Just like that. So there it is. There's one of your tapered bearings. That's the most rear bearing. And also on here, that's pressed on. Then you got a spacer and another spacer. There we go. Still got a lot of oil on there. So this spacer is standard, so that just goes in like that. And then try to get it separated here. There's a spacer these vary, and these are what you use to adjust the preload on that pair of bearings. Okay, and you'll see more about that later. But That's it. So you've got the pinion, bearing, major spacer, and then the adjustment spacer. And that's it. Now the next step here, other than getting my this stinky grease off, stinky gear oil off my hands, is we've got 2 races that are pressed in, and then on the rear end here, we've got a seal, and we've got a ball bearing that all has to come out, and that's next. Okay, we're going to press the 2, let's see, we're going to press the intermediate tapered bearing, the lower roller bearing, and then there's a big spacer in there. So to do that, you're going to put it in the press, and we've got to get a press that here that will fit right down on that inner bearing race. So that's this diameter. So I'm going to put that in there, and then we'll set this up, and I'll show you how that comes out. Okay, we've got this all centered. Got the bottom blocks in there to give clearance so that that lower bearing can come out. Now, if I press that, that bearing could just drop out. Got a bucket with a towel in it in case that happens, but as I press this slowly, I'm going to get underneath there so I can catch it, and we'll just see how this goes. So we're just going to pull it slowly there, and my pressure gauge is reading really low, maybe 300 psi, so it's already starting to come out. This is a really easy press to take out here. So I'm going to just feel around what's going on there. Here comes the bearing. I can feel it lowering. I tried to sit those blocks up so it wouldn't interfere, but it could, and if it does, I'll have to make some adjustments. But so far, it feels like it's going to be fine. There it goes. Just broke loose. And I am going to release the pressure. There we go. And just move some things around. There it goes. Everything's coming out. There it is. Nice. And it's mostly heavy because I've got everything I was pressing it out with, but here's what came out. So you got the bearing there, the spacer, and then the bearing there. So that's everything we just pressed out, came out no problem. And I'm going to show you how to take out the bearing races on the next segment here. Now we're just going to talk about a little bit of a detail on the disassembly. So, and that involves there's 2 pinion bearings that are shown here. That's the race, and the other one's still in the case. So I'm going to show you how you remove these. So these are roller bearings. There's 2 of these, and then in the nose, the front end, there is a ball bearing that looks like that. And by the way, this is the only bearing that's kind of non-standard on the whole thing. Everything else uses standard bearings, so you don't need to buy those at the dealer. You can get those through whatever sources you want, and they're reasonably priced. They're maybe 35, 38 bucks a piece. This one from the dealer is quite expensive. It's over 100 bucks. You can look online. Sometimes you can go overseas and get deals. So let's talk about the removal of these races for the roller bearings, though, and then that'll be it for this segment. So I'm going to take the camera here, kind of point it down in there, so you can see there's the bearing. I've already tapped it out. It's not out completely, and before I take it out completely, I just wanted to describe to you how you do that. So the way you do that is we're going to turn this case back the other way, so we can get access to the back of that bearing race from this side. And when you, I'm going to try to get a shot of this, see if I can pull this off and try to do this all at the same time. So yeah, that's a pretty good shot. So you can see down there, you can see the, see if I can get it to focus on that, yeah. So down there, you can see the seat for the bearing. And then you see in that seat, there's two little indents, 180 degrees apart. It's those indents, that they put those in there so you can tap out the bearing from the backside without boogering up the seating surface. And so I'm going to show you how to do that here. And let's get this back focused. There you go. Man, I look like I know what I'm doing here. Okay, so you know, normally when you're removing a race, you know, it's real typical practice to go around and around and tap it a little bit and kind of get it to go evenly out. Now you could do that, and that's what I did, but frankly I boogered up a couple spots on the seat inside the case. It's not a deal killer. I just had to clean it up, and so it's better to avoid all that problem and having to clean up a seat. No big deal if it happens, but it's better if it doesn't happen. So the way this is set up is the factory, they set up those little two indents so you can take this out without boogering anything up. So the way that's done is I'm going to reach down in there and put it in the indent on this side, tap, and then move it 180 degrees to the other indent, tap, go to the other side, tap. It's moving, so just have to take your time, and I think it's going to fall out right now. Not quite. And almost there. Okay, so there it is. Dropped right out. So again, there, that's what I was tapping on. That's the seated side. You can actually see the mark, not the marks from the drift. This is hardened steel. The drift is fairly soft. So but you're tapping, 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 tapping where those indents are so you don't mess up the seat. Now I'll show you what it looks like in there. It's heavy. And just take a look. So there it is. It's all freed up right there. All right. Okay, this is the removal of the side bearings on the housing here. And so this one, you're going to need a special tool. This is one I had. I kind of modified it a bit so I could fit underneath this bearing. And then, so yeah, pay attention to this one. If you don't have the tool, this one's going to be hard. There's very little clearance below the bearing to the casting portion. So anyways, this works. And then we just give it a little on the gun and pull it off. And watching this, it is moving. Short bursts. And I bottomed out right here at the top, so I'm going to have to loosen that off and then pull it off the rest. I didn't notice that, but yeah, this bottomed out, so I just need to undo that, put another spacer in and pull it the rest of the way out. If that's the idea, then you flip it over, do the same thing on the other side.